She said 15 languages. They laughed. 3 minutes later, a single word in Arabic emptied the room of sound and power. 70th floor, Bulos Global. The morning sun burns white across Manhattan. At one end, Khalida Bulos, silk hijab, diamond calm smile, flanked by her executives. Diane Stanfield, Willie Diaz, Willie Douglas. At the other, Patricia Moore, 13, navy cardigan, school backpack biting her shoulder. Behind her, a blurred reflection of Miriam Moore, the maid. Polishing the window no one ever looks through. 15, Khalida's laugh is soft, expensive. My best analysts wrestle with one. Diane's grin is polite. The two Willies trade smirks. Miriam's cloth pauses mid-swipe. She doesn't dare speak. Losing this job would crush rent, school, everything. Patricia doesn't blink. You can pick the language. The audacity catches even the skyline off guard. She starts with English, the room's native armor, then slides into Arabic, not tourist phrases, but the braided cadence of someone who understands how words hold status. Khalida's smile stalls. French follows, then Mandarin, Spanish, Yoruba. Consonants and tones stepping like a metronome. By Korean and Russian, the laughter is gone. By the 15th, the only sound is Diane's laptop fan. Before we continue, click subscribe. Like this video and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more captivating stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Patricia unzips the backpack. Notebooks, credentials, stamped course completions from Geneva, Sao Paulo, Cairo. Diane leans in. That seal is authentic. Khalida keeps her poise, but her fingers curl slightly, the reflex of someone who doesn't like unknown variables. I didn't come to perform, Patricia says. I came because there's a line in your Levant partnership draft that changes exclusive partnership into permanent ownership. The boardroom oxygen thins. Willie Diaz glances at Willie Douglas. Impossible, Diane says, too quickly. Patricia taps her tablet. The screen shows the paragraph. The mistranslation is there, bright as a flare. I fixed it in the version your investors saw. Khalida studies the girl as if she's a new market. The maid's daughter has already bent a billion-dollar room without raising her voice. And this, Patricia hints with a level gaze, is only the beginning. Because the road to this table did not start today, is it? It runs through library stacks, midnight screens, and a vow made the night she heard someone laugh at her mother. And that is where Patricia's story truly begins. Before the 15th language, before the glass table and the stunned executives, there was a kitchen the size of a bus stop and a clock that never stopped lying about sleep. The Bronx apartment cracked in the winter and sweated in the summer. Pipes groaned. A radiator hissed. Miriam Moore folded uniforms at the table, industrial gray shirts with her name stitched small, as if modest letters could shrink long hours. She'd come home smelling like lemon cleaner and elevator oil, kiss Patricia's forehead, and say the same thing every night. 10 minutes to talk, then you sleep. 10 minutes always became 12. 12 became 15. But at 3 a.m., when Miriam finally dozed off on the couch, Patricia would climb back to the chair, open her second life, and begin. Her notebook was more scar than object, a collage of continents. The first page was English, verbs caged into tenses. The second, Spanish, verbs let out to run. French curved like ribbon. Yoruba, moved like drums. Mandarin balanced tones across tight ropes. Arabic unfurled like a calligrapher's breath. Between phrases, she drew tiny flags, arrows, street names she didn't yet know, and people she'd only met through headphones. The Maid'S Public Library. 2 blocks away became her embassy. The librarians knew her by the speed she walked. Urgent, grateful. She took the corner computer as if it were a steering wheel, logged into free courses, mailed exercises to tutors in Cairo, Dakar, Bogota, Seoul. When her headphone jack broke, she held the cable in place with electrical tape. When her screen time expired, she pleaded for 15 more minutes to finish a sentence. She was always finishing sentences. One afternoon, the Wi-Fi hiccuped and the world paused mid-syllable. A volunteer tutor in Egypt, Dr. Samira, kept typing. "Your Arabic is a little too modern standard for real conversations," she wrote. "Try my aunt's dialect from Alexandria. People live there, not in grammar books." Patricia laughed out loud, startling a man asleep at a nearby table. She replied in hesitant Arabic that shook but didn't fall. "Teach me how people really breathe." Night stretched. Her phone screen burned crescents into her retinas. At 3:07 a.m., a shadow fell across the table. "Trish," Miriam whispered, voice soft from exhaustion. "You're going to be sick." Patricia lifted her head, words still flickering in her eyes. "Mom, when I speak their language, they finally see me." Miriam cupped Patricia's cheek with the hand that had scrubbed 100 marble lobbies. "Baby, I always see you." She sighed, then looked at the clock and surrendered. 20 more minutes, then sleep. Deal? Deal. Patricia turned the page, opened a new world, and stepped in. If Patricia's world smelled like dust and hope, Khalida Boulos's smelled like jasmine tea and polished steel. She didn't simply occupy the 70 floors of a Boulos Global, she arranged them. Oil money had seeded the empire, mergers had grown it, language had sealed it. Born in Port Sharjah, hardened in Old Doha, sharpened in London, crowned in New York. Khalida wore continents the way others wore perfume, lightly, expensively, unmistakably. She was brilliant and blunt. Her staff admired her results and feared her calendar. She called them assets in meetings and assets in private. To her, the world was a spreadsheet, with countries in the columns and time zones in the rows. On Monday mornings, she practiced cruelty without raising her voice. "If data can't justify your instincts," she told Coimin Diane Stanfield, "then your instincts have to leave." To gay Willie Diaz and being Willie Douglas. "I don't want men who nod. I want men who calculate." Their laughter always followed a second too late. Patricia learned the floor plan before she learned the faces. While Miriam pushed a cart that rattled like an apology, Patricia counted security cameras, badge readers, the way conference doors failed to latch unless pulled tight. She memorized the rhythm of the executive hallway, the 9:40 latte, the 11:15 huddle, the 2:02 whisper that never needed microphones. On a Wednesday that stank of rain, she heard it, the sentence that would lodge beneath her ribs and not come out. Khalida, emerging from a meeting with Diane, paused by the window Miriam had just cleaned. "We need applicants with elite language credentials," she said. "Not sentimental diversity hires. Let the Maid'S kids stick to cleaning, not coding." Diane's smile was the kind that keeps jobs. "Understood." Miriam swayed. One hand went to her cloth. The other found the window frame. Patricia saw her mother choose not to react. The way people who need work often choose silence over dignity. Something inside Patricia, the quiet part, skipped a beat, then rewound and replayed the words until they pressed into the notebook of her bones. She didn't cry. She filed. That night, she copied the sentence in 5 languages with translation margins. She wrote out the Arabic version and softened the edges of certain consonants until it sounded like a memory, then like a warning. She Googled, "One-party consent state New York," and underlined the answer twice. She didn't eat dinner. She chewed determination until it tasted like strategy. Her teachers at school noticed the change. "Patricia," said Ms. Alvarez in homeroom, "you're answering questions I haven't asked." "I'm practicing," she replied. "For what?" "To be undeniable." The next months assembled themselves into a plan shaped like a question mark. Could she catch a system in its own language and make it translate itself into justice? She practiced greetings in 9 dialects, then 10. She pulled free courses from universities that didn't know her zip code. She sent voice notes to strangers willing to correct her vowels. And when one tutor in Busan wrote, "Your Korean has a Bronx heartbeat, keep it," Patricia grinned. She didn't want to sound like someone else. She wanted to sound like everyone, and herself. The day she saw the Struss merger draft on a printer tray outside the strategy pit, she didn't touch it. She read the highlighted paragraph through the glass of the copy room and blinked twice. The Arabic term for an exclusive partnership had been warped into permanent ownership. A tiny error, one word with the ego of a land grab. She didn't steal the paper. She wrote the problem from memory, went home, and rebuilt the sentence from the ground up. Classical structure, modern usage, investor-safe tone. Then she returned the next morning and, on a shared internal comment portal that no one bothered to lock, she posted an anonymous correction in calm, meticulous Arabic. No one replied. The draft sent to investors reflected her fix anyway. She recognized the new cadence and almost smiled. Anonymous was fine. Anonymous could still be strategic. 2 weeks later, she stood in the hallway outside the boardroom with her backpack, listening to the rhythm of voices on the other side. Khalida's even, Diane's clipped, Willie's eager, the other Willie's echo. She saw her mother down the corridor polishing a fingerprint that would be replaced before lunch. The cart wobbled. Miriam's shoulders sagged. Patricia closed her eyes and pictured the notebook's first page. English. May I speak? Arabic. Al yumkinuni al kalam? French. Puis-je parler? Yoruba. C'est moi le soro? 15 questions in 15 voices forming a single statement. I belong. She didn't want a scene. She wanted proof. Proof could outlive rooms. Proof could outlive laughter. Proof could survive anyone's mood. She checked the recorder in her pocket, not to trap, but to document. She checked the tablet, credentials queued, video links highlighted. She smoothed the sleeve of her cardigan like armor and watched the second hand crawl to the top of the hour. Miriam noticed her then. "Trish, what are you doing up here?" Patricia squeezed her mother's hand, the one that carried floors and futures. "Speaking," she said. And when the boardroom door opened, when skyline light poured across the carpet, when names with titles looked up expecting delivery or deference, Patricia Moore stepped in to translate a world that had never bothered to learn her name. She did not bring anger. She brought verbs, receipts, and a mirror. She would confront Khalida Boulos, not with fury, but with fluency, not with noise, but with evidence. The boardroom felt like the top of the world, and for a moment, Patricia Moore stood alone in it. She had spoken her 15 languages, and silence now wrapped the glass walls like a spell. The city glittered beyond them, but all eyes were fixed on the small girl standing with her backpack, the weight of disbelief pressing against her like wind. Khalida Boulos broke first. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms with the ease of someone who had learned to wear arrogance like a diamond. 15 languages, she said again, as if repetition could shrink the truth. Anyone can memorize phrases, child. Fluency is not mimicry. Patricia tilted her head slightly. I didn't memorize, she said. I understand. A small, amused exhale slipped from Diane Stanfield. Oh, we'll see about that. The two Willies, Diaz and Douglas, sat on either side of the table, trying to gauge their boss's expression. Their smirks were smaller now, uncertain. Without breaking eye contact, Patricia unzipped her backpack. The sound was soft, but sharp in the quiet. Inside, she pulled out a small folder, edges worn, pages neatly stacked and sealed in transparent sleeves. Here, she said, stepping closer. I thought you might ask. Khalida raised an eyebrow, but didn't reach out. Diane, perhaps eager to prove the girl wrong, took the top sheet and squinted. Then her face changed, just slightly, a tightening around the mouth. The document bore an official Geneva Language Institute seal, another from AU Sao Paulo Linguistics University, another Cairo International Language Program. Each one dated, signed, verified. These are real, Diane murmured, the words slipping out before she caught them. Khalida frowned. That's impossible. These are global credentials. Patricia folded her hands in front of her. I took their online programs, passed the proficiency exams remotely. Some have mentorship components, video-based. I qualified for scholarships through open competitions. Anyone can forge documents, Khalida said, her tone dismissive but quieter than before. Even children, with internet access. Patricia nodded once. Then I'll show you. From her tablet, she tapped a file. The device came alive with a glowing blue icon. Cairo University Language Department. A small notification blinked. Incoming call. Professor Samira Al-Fayed. The executives exchanged glances. Khalida's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. The video loaded. A woman in her 50s appeared on screen, glasses perched low, her background lined with bookshelves. Patricia, she said, her voice warm, the rhythm familiar. Patricia smiled. Bonjour, professeur. Her French flowed like silk. Then she shifted mid-sentence. Kaifa haluki al-yawm, ustadati. Flawless Arabic, sharp and musical. Professor Samira beamed. Ah, my little prodigy. You didn't tell me you were calling from New York today. Who are your friends? Patricia turned the tablet slightly, her calm eyes cutting through the stunned faces. My name is Patricia Moore. I'm with Ms. Khalida Boulos, CEO of Boulos Global. The professor adjusted her glasses. Oh, the Khalida Boulos. Wonderful. Then allow me to tell you, this young girl is exceptional. She has a talent I have not seen in 15 years of teaching. She corrects my graduate students in pronunciation, syntax, even idiomatic phrasing. Her Arabic is native level. Khalida's face remained still, but her knuckles whitened where her hand gripped the table. Professor, Patricia continued gently, could you confirm the coursework I completed last term? Of course. Arabic, French, English, and introductory Swahili interpretation, all passed with distinction. She smiled. Patricia, my dear. You will make an extraordinary translator one day, or perhaps a diplomat." Patricia's lips curved faintly. "Thank you, Professor." The professor waved, unaware of the earthquake she had just triggered. "Ma'a salama, Habibti." Patricia ended the call. The silence that followed was no longer disbelief. It was something heavier, quieter. Willie Douglas broke it. "Boss," he said softly, "she's legit." Khalida's eyes darted toward him. He lowered his gaze. Patricia placed the tablet back on the table. "Would you like to test me further, ma'am? I can translate any part of your most recent investor pitch." Khalida's voice came out lower than she intended. "You read internal company material?" Patricia blinked, her tone innocent but precise. "My mother cleans the rooms where they're printed. Sometimes the documents are open on the table. I never touch them. I just notice things." The air turned electric. Even Diane, whose job relied on control, swallowed hard. "You notice things," Khalida repeated. "And what exactly have you noticed?" Patricia met her eyes. "That words can lose or gain millions, depending on how they're translated." It wasn't a threat. It was a fact, delivered with surgical precision. For a moment, Khalida saw herself not as the predator in her glass tower, but as prey, studied, evaluated, decoded. She looked down at the folder again, at the seals and stamps that refused to vanish into illusion. The weight of her own ignorance pressed in. The girl had spoken her language, better than she did. She masked it quickly. "You're clever," she said, forcing a smile, "but clever isn't competence." Patricia's reply was steady. "Competence is being clever, ma'am, just with purpose." It landed like a line rehearsed not for defiance, but for destiny. Khalida exhaled slowly and tapped her pen against the table, a rhythm of retreat disguised as poise. "You're very prepared for someone so young." Patricia nodded once. "Preparation is the only thing I can afford." The city hummed below. Somewhere in the distance, horns and engines reminded them all that life went on. But inside that glass room, the axis had shifted. For the first time in years, Khalida Boulos felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel. Intimidation, not from rivals, not from men in suits, not from investors threatening to pull funds, but from a 13-year-old girl with a backpack full of proof and a voice fluent in truth. And though she hid it behind crossed arms and a measured smirk, Khalida knew, deep in the quiet parts of her pride, that the first test had already begun. The power in the room no longer belonged entirely to her. For a long moment, no one spoke. The echo of Patricia's last words, "Preparation is the only thing I can afford," still clung to the glass walls like a ghost. Khalida Boulos sat perfectly still, but her eyes had hardened into something colder than disbelief, calculation. She tapped her manicured nails on the table once, twice. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that looked generous from far away and dangerous up close. "Impressive," she said at last. "But clever parlor tricks don't build companies." She turned to the window, voice calm and sharp as a blade. "You speak languages. Fine. But this is Boulos Global. We manage energy markets, multinational mergers, and seven-figure contracts, not spelling bees." Patricia Moore stood quietly, unbothered. The skyline shimmered behind her. New York stretched beneath the boardroom like a translation of ambition itself. "With respect, ma'am," Patricia said, "this isn't about words. It's about meaning." Khalida didn't turn around. "Cute trick," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "But business isn't a school project." Patricia tilted her head slightly. Her voice remained steady. Then why was the merger translation in your investor report wrong? The sentence landed like a thunderclap. Diane Stanfield's pen froze mid-scratch. Willie Diaz blinked hard. Willie Douglas sat up straighter, trying to read the billionaire's face. Khalida turned slowly. "Excuse me?" Patricia met her gaze evenly. "The Arabic term al-sharika al-mustaqilla in your Gulf merger report was mistranslated as exclusive ownership instead of exclusive partnership. It changes the contract from shared equity to full control." No one moved. Patricia's tone didn't accuse, it simply revealed. If that draft had gone through uncorrected, it could have cost your company roughly $120 million in breach claims. Diane's eyes widened. "That's absurd," she said, too fast. "That report was reviewed by 3 certified translators." Patricia shrugged lightly. "Maybe so, but I saw it on the printer outside your strategy office 3 weeks ago. I was waiting for my mother." The Arabic phrasing didn't sound right. Her mother. That word lingered between them. The maid's daughter. Now challenging the billionaire. Khalida's tone sharpened. "You saw it. You're telling me a child caught a contractual error my staff didn't." Patricia tapped her tablet. "Not caught, corrected." She swiped across the screen. A document appeared. Its title: Gulf Consolidated Holdings, Bulos Global Draft No. 2. Highlighted in yellow were the same Arabic lines, side by side with Patricia's handwritten note in the margin. Recheck context. Al-Sharika al-Mustaqilla equals independent partner, not ownership claim. Then below it, correction submitted. Anonymous internal user, 10:47 p.m. The timestamp glowed in quiet defiance. The room tightened. The hum of the city felt louder through the glass. Diane's throat moved, but no words came. Willie Douglas cleared his throat. "Boss," he murmured, "that timestamp matches the update we found before the final report went to investors." Khalida snapped her eyes toward him. "You're saying it means," Patricia said gently, "someone in your office implemented the correction, but didn't realize where it came from." Khalida's voice turned brittle. "That's impossible. Those reports are restricted." "Restricted," Patricia repeated, "but not invisible. The review platform uses open comment channels. You didn't lock them." Diane's pale fingers gripped her notebook. "I thought I'd had fixed that glitch," she whispered. Patricia looked at her, not unkindly. "You thought right. They did, after I left the note." A beat of silence passed, thick, humiliating. Then Willie Diaz muttered what everyone was thinking. "The maid's kid saved our company." Khalida's eyes cut toward him, and the room went still again. But the words were out. They couldn't be unsaid. Patricia stood motionless under the weight of it, her backpack strap creasing the shoulder of her cardigan. She looked like a schoolgirl in a storm of suits, but the calm belonged to her. Khalida's pride warred with the truth. She rose from her chair, slow and deliberate, heels clicking against the marble floor. "You're accusing me of negligence?" "No, ma'am," Patricia said softly. "I'm proving it was avoidable." The billionaire's jaw tightened. "You had no authorization to access company materials." Patricia nodded. "That's true. I only had eyes," she tapped the side of her temple, "and enough understanding of Arabic to know when someone's making a $120 million mistake." Diane pressed her lips together, trying to stay invisible. Willie Douglas rubbed a hand down his tie, whispering under his breath, "She's not wrong." Patricia took a breath. "I didn't say anything because I thought it wasn't my place. But when you laughed today, when you said languages are tricks, I realized meaning doesn't care who delivers it, only who listens." The line hung there, balanced perfectly between grace and defiance. Khalida's gaze softened, but just for a flicker, the kind of microsecond where arrogance becomes awe. "You expect me to thank you?" "No," Patricia said, shaking her head. "I expect you to verify." She turned the tablet so everyone could see the final investor report on the company's website. The Arabic phrasing there matched her corrected version exactly. "Your deal was approved," Patricia added quietly, "because the partners read that report and found no conflict in terminology. If the mistranslation had gone through, you'd be facing a lawsuit." For the first time, Khalida had no words. Diane spoke instead, her voice barely above a whisper. "I remember that night. It said a system suggestion came through right before the final upload. We assumed it was one of the junior analysts." Patricia's gaze was steady. "It wasn't. It was me." Silence again, but this time it was reverent. Khalida turned back to the window, her reflection merging with the city skyline. For years, she had stood above the world, measuring people by degrees, accents, profits. Now a 13-year-old had reminded her that wisdom could live in the most unexpected places, and that humility wasn't something money could buy. "You could have stayed silent," she said finally. "Let us fail." Patricia's answer was simple. "My mother works here. Failure pays late." The room exhaled. Khalida sank back into her chair. "You corrected a legal translation that 3 professionals missed," she said slowly. "Wait. Because I don't like watching people laugh at the wrong meaning," Patricia replied. For the first time, Khalida didn't know how to respond. The foundation of her authority, precision, intellect, control, had been translated into something she couldn't fully understand: humility. Patricia gathered her folder, closing it with quiet dignity. "You said business isn't a school project," she murmured. "You're right. It's a language. Some people just forget to read carefully." The billionaire looked up at her, eyes unreadable. Somewhere deep in that silence, something cracked. Not glass, not ego exactly, but something older. Pride. The girl she had mocked had just exposed her greatest vulnerability. Not her ignorance, but her assumption that power made her fluent in everything. And, for the first time, Khalida Boulos, the woman who built an empire out of oil and arrogance, realized she was being taught. The maid's daughter hadn't humiliated her. She'd saved her, and Khalida wasn't sure which felt heavier. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the hum of the city pressing against the glass walls. Khalida Boulos stared at the girl before her, the one she had mocked, dismissed, and nearly humiliated, and felt something she hadn't felt in decades. Cornered. Patricia stood motionless, her hands folded neatly in front of her, her backpack still hanging off one shoulder. The silence wasn't awkward, it was deliberate. It belonged to her now. "You think," Khalida said finally, breaking the stillness, "that catching a typo makes you powerful?" Patricia didn't flinch. "It wasn't a typo, ma'am. It was a translation error." "Semantics," Khalida shot back. Patricia nodded once, as if conceding. "Maybe, but sometimes semantics decide who gets paid." and who gets erased. The billionaire's nostrils flared. Enough! She leaned forward, reclaiming her authority through posture, if not through truth. You've made your point. You're clever. You saved a document. Congratulations. She reached for her pen, signaling dismissal. But Patricia didn't move. Instead, she reached into her backpack again. The executives stiffened slightly, uncertain what new revelation was about to surface. When her hand emerged, it wasn't with certificates or documents this time, but a small digital recorder, its light blinking faintly red. I didn't come here for congratulations, Patricia said quietly. I came for accountability. Khalida frowned. What is that? Patricia's voice stayed calm. Evidence, she pressed. Play. And then, her own voice filled the room. Maid's kids should stick to cleaning, not coding. The words echoed against the glass walls, bouncing through the air like accusations carved in steel. Gasps broke from Diane and both Willies. Khalida's face drained of color. Her hand froze mid-air above her desk. Patricia let the words repeat once before clicking stop. The silence afterward was heavier than the sound itself. Khalida blinked once, twice, as if the world had betrayed her. Where did you get that? I recorded it, Patricia said simply. Khalida's shock morphed into fury. That's illegal, she snapped, her voice rising for the first time. Patricia didn't flinch. No, ma'am. New York is a one-party consent state. I was part of the conversation, well, within hearing distance of it, so it's legal. Her tone remained respectful, but her words cut with surgical precision. But even if it weren't, discrimination is still illegal, and cruelty isn't exactly good for business either. Khalida's jaw tightened. You planned this. I prepared for it, Patricia corrected. The room felt smaller now. The executive's polished calm was gone. Diane looked pale, her knuckles white against the notepad she no longer dared to write on. Willie Diaz shifted uncomfortably. Willie Douglas stared at the recorder as if it might detonate. Khalida leaned back in her chair, trying to regain composure. You think you can blackmail me? Patricia's eyes met hers, not angry, but steady, almost sorrowful. No, ma'am, I don't want to destroy your company. I want you to listen. Listen? Khalida echoed. Yes, Patricia said, her voice unwavering. You said those words like they were a joke, but they weren't. They were a sentence. Her mother's image flashed in her mind. Miriam Moore, head down, scrubbing invisible fingerprints from spotless glass, pretending not to hear laughter that wasn't meant for her ears. When people like my mom hear things like that, Patricia continued softly, they don't argue. They just work harder. They smile and act invisible. And the world keeps laughing. She looked around the table, her gaze landing on each executive. But I don't do invisible. I translate it. Khalida's throat tightened. Translate it? Patricia nodded. Into proof. For the first time, Diane spoke, her voice trembling. Ms. Boulos, that clip, if it ever went public. I know, Khalida interrupted. The billionaire's pulse quickened. Headlines flashed across her mind. Boulos, global CEO faces discrimination allegations. Viral recording exposes corporate elitism. Daughter of Maid outsmarts billionaire. She could see the investors pulling back, contracts freezing, the empire she'd built unraveling in hours. A 13-year-old girl could destroy everything with one upload. Khalida's instinct was to intimidate, to remind the girl who owned the building they stood in. But intimidation required control, and control was the one thing she no longer had. Patricia, sensing the shift, placed the recorder gently on the glass table between them. "I'm not here to threaten you," she said quietly. "I'm here to remind you what you said." Khalida's voice cracked. "You think quoting me makes you righteous?" "No," Patricia said, "but it makes you accountable." The girl's words were calm, almost too calm for the chaos they caused. "My mom told me once that words reveal the parts of us we try hardest to hide. You just proved her right." The executives stayed silent. Diane's eyes darted toward the billionaire, waiting for her to regain control, to reassert the old hierarchy. But Khalida couldn't find the words. She had built her career commanding boardrooms, dictating billion-dollar deals across continents. Yet one sentence, one echo of her own cruelty had stripped her armor bare. Patricia finally sat down, the smallest person in the room claiming the largest chair. Her posture wasn't rebellious. It was composed, purposeful. "You said business isn't a school project," Patricia said softly. "You were right. It's a test. And sometimes people fail it without realizing the question changed." The line landed like a whisper, turned sermon. Khalida looked up, eyes glinting with something she couldn't name. Shame, perhaps, or the first sting of humility. "You recorded me, corrected my deal, exposed my words. Why?" Patricia's answer came without hesitation. "Because you taught me something too," she said. "You taught me how much damage one sentence can do. I wanted to make sure it didn't go ungraded." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reckoning. The recorder's faint red light blinked once more, then went dark as Patricia switched it off. She slipped it back into her bag, her tone still even. "Don't worry, ma'am. I'm not uploading it. Not yet." The unspoken, "but I could," hung in the air. Diane exhaled shakily. The two Willies avoided eye contact, pretending to check their phones. Khalida finally managed to speak. "Do you realize what kind of position this puts me in?" Patricia met her gaze. "A position to change, ma'am." And just like that, the tension shifted again. The girl's innocence, her youth, her composure, her refusal to gloat, turned her from an adversary into something more dangerous. A mirror. Khalida saw herself reflected not in power, but in judgment, the kind that doesn't punish with revenge, but with truth. Her empire trembled, not because of exposure, but because she knew, in her heart, that the voice in that recording was real. And that meant the person who said it no longer controlled the meaning of her own words. Patricia's innocence had become her weapon, a weapon sharper than shame, stronger than status, and for the first time, Khalida Boulos realized she wasn't fighting a girl. She was standing trial before one. The red light of the recorder had gone out, but its echo still burned in the silence. Khalida Boulos sat perfectly still, her reflection fragmented across the glass table, one version proud, one humiliated, one terrified. The empire she had built on precision now trembled under the weight of a child's clarity. Patricia Moore didn't move either. She stood across from the billionaire, steady, calm, and impossibly composed. The fluorescent light glinted off the recorder she had placed between them, small, unthreatening, yet more powerful than every signed contract in the room. "I could delete the recording," Patricia said softly, "or I could send it to the press." Her voice wasn't cruel. It was matter-of-fact, the tone of someone narrating truth rather than delivering a threat. Khalida leaned back, crossing her arms to hide the tremor in her hands. "So this is what it's about," she said. "You want money." Patricia shook her head. "No, ma'am. I want correction." Khalida exhaled sharply through her nose. "Correction? That's what you call this? A child blackmailing a billionaire?" Patricia met her eyes. "No, ma'am. I'm giving you a second chance to build something worth more than money." The words landed with surgical precision, slicing through Khalida's defenses faster than any accusation could. Across the room, the executives sat frozen, Diane clutching her pen like a rosary, the two Willies pretending not to breathe. Patricia reached into her backpack again, this time producing a thin folder. Not certificates, not evidence, but papers with handwritten notes, bullet points neatly organized. She laid them on the table like terms of peace after war. "These," she said, sliding the first page forward, "are my conditions." Khalida stared at her. "Conditions? You're 13. 13, Patricia said. "And prepared." She pointed to the first line written in firm, looping script. 1. Promote Miriam Moore to facility manager, with a fair salary, full health care, and a written contract. Patricia looked directly at her. "My mother has cleaned this building for 7 years. She manages people, schedules, and safety protocols every day, just without the title or the pay. That ends today." The words were quiet but unshakable. Khalida said nothing, but the way her jaw tightened betrayed discomfort. Patricia slid the second page forward. 2. Create the Moore Scholars Program, scholarships for multilingual children from underprivileged backgrounds. "Talent like mine shouldn't depend on luck," Patricia continued. "There are hundreds of kids like me, kids who can learn, adapt, lead, but never get seen because of where they come from. You can change that. Name the program after my mother, not me. She earned it." The mention of Miriam again cracked something in the billionaire's chest. The name felt heavy, too human, too undeservedly kind. Patricia reached for the final page. 3. Hire Patricia Moore as a junior linguistic analyst under professional supervision. "I'm not asking for favors," she said. "I'm asking for opportunity. I've proven my ability. Let me work. Let me learn." She paused, letting each word settle. "That's all." The boardroom air shifted. No threat, no shouting, just logic, fairness, and an unsettling stillness that came when justice entered a room uninvited. Khalida stared at the 3 pages spread across her empire's most expensive table. "You're serious?" Patricia nodded. "Completely. And if I refuse, then the world hears your voice," Patricia said simply. "But that's not what I want. I don't want to ruin you, Ms. Boulos. I want you to redeem yourself." Khalida laughed, short, brittle, hollow. "You sound like a preacher." Patricia smiled faintly. "No, just a translator. I speak your language now." That line hung there, electric. For a moment, Khalida forgot she was arguing with a teenager. The girl's tone, posture, and conviction all belonged to someone older, someone carved by purpose rather than age. Diane whispered, "Ms. Boulos, maybe we should consider—" "Silence," Khalida said automatically, though her voice lacked venom. Her eyes moved from the folder to the recorder to Patricia's face, the same face she had dismissed an hour ago as a child's. She saw nothing manipulative there. No hatred, just certainty. "You really believe this will fix things?" Khalida asked finally. Patricia took a slow breath. "No, but it's a start. You can't fix what you won't acknowledge. These terms make you accountable. Not to me, but to the people who work for you, who believe in you, who've been waiting for fairness from someone in your position." Her words fell like quiet thunder. Khalida looked away. The skyline glittered outside, cold and impersonal. Somewhere down there, millions of lives she would never meet moved beneath her company's shadow. How many had she crushed under her ambition without even noticing? When she turned back, her eyes were softer, but her voice still clung to pride. "You're extraordinary," she said slowly, "but you're also naive. You think business bends for morality. It doesn't." Patricia didn't argue. She just said, "Then maybe you should." The sentence hit harder than any lecture could. Khalida picked up the first page again, scanning it. The ink shimmered faintly under the overhead lights, as if mocking her hesitation. "Facility manager," she muttered, reading. "Scholarship fund, internship, you've thought of everything." "I had to," Patricia said. "You built your world on deals. I built mine on preparation." Something in that broke the last defense in Khalida's face. She reached for a pen, her most expensive one, gold-capped and engraved with her initials. The same pen she'd used to sign merger contracts, multi-million-dollar ventures, and dismissals. Now it felt heavier than ever. "You realize," she said quietly, more to herself than to the room, "that signing this makes me look weak." Patricia's voice softened. "It makes you look human." Khalida looked at her for a long time. The girl didn't gloat, didn't smile, didn't even blink. She just stood there, unwavering. Something about her calmness was more unnerving than rebellion. Finally, Khalida exhaled and signed the first page. The pen glided across the glass table, scratching her name beside a future she hadn't planned for. Then the second. Then the third. She placed the pen down. Patricia watched, quietly. "Thank you," she said simply. Khalida leaned back, her expression unreadable. "You don't know what you've just done, do you?" "I do," Patricia said. "I just made sure someone like my mother never gets laughed at again." The billionaire's throat tightened. For the first time in years, she didn't have a comeback. She nodded once, a gesture both surrender and salute. Patricia gathered the signed papers into her folder, sliding them neatly back into her backpack. "I'll email you the scholarship outline. You can make the announcement in your own words." Khalida smiled faintly, though it trembled. "You trust me with words?" Patricia smiled back. "Now you know how much they matter." The girl turned toward the door. As she walked out, her reflection crossed the billionaires on the glass wall, two worlds intersecting in one transparent frame. Power and principle, arrogance and awakening. When the door clicked shut, the executives finally exhaled. Diane murmured, "She's something else." Khalida's gaze stayed on the city. "She's what I used to be before I forgot who I was." Outside, the skyline gleamed like signatures waiting for meaning. Khalida Boulos had signed the papers, and without realizing it, she had signed the rebirth of her soul. 6 months later, Boulos Global looked different. Not in structure, but in spirit. The glass still gleamed. The skyline still shimmered. The elevators still whispered the soft music of wealth. But something new had entered the air. A language no one could name, but everyone could feel. The Charmour Scholars Program had begun. Across continents, in Lagos, Mumbai, Rio, and Nairobi. The company's logo now shared space with the name of a once invisible woman. Miriam Moore. Billboards read, Bridging the World Through Language, the More Scholars Initiative. In Lagos, Patricia stood before a group of children sitting at laptops older than she was. Their faces were bright, fingers hesitant. Behind her, a banner fluttered. Speak the world, change the world. Language, Patricia told them, switching from English to Yoruba, then to Spanish, isn't just grammar, it's connection. When you speak someone's language, you tell them, I see you. The children repeated her words, their accents blending continents into a single sound. Cameras captured it all. The Billionaire's company turning classrooms into cathedrals of possibility. In Mumbai, she taught virtually, the screen behind her alive with faces from 12 countries. Her mother, Miriam, appeared in the same frame, reviewing logistics and smiling with a cheated confidence that used to belong to other people. Her new title, Facility Manager, Global Initiatives Division, shimmered on her company badge like a promise kept. Gone was the woman who once carried buckets and silence. Now she carried authority. Patricia, she said one morning over a video call, adjusting her tailored navy blazer, the Mumbai Center wants to expand their scholarship quota. That's your work. Patricia smiled. It's our work, Mom. Meanwhile, at Harbulos Global Headquarters, transformation wasn't just a slogan, it was televised. Inside the same boardroom where arrogance once echoed, Khalida Boulos now stood at the podium, cameras flashing, investors watching, journalists scribbling. She wore her signature white suit, but her tone was different. Warmer, slower, deliberate. 6 months ago, she began, I was reminded of something I had forgotten. Intelligence doesn't need inheritance. It needs opportunity. She paused, glancing toward the front row. Patricia and Miriam sat side by side, hand in hand. That child, Khalida continued, her voice tightening slightly, reminded me that power without compassion is ignorance disguised as success. Today, that ends. Applause filled the room. Cameras zoomed in on Patricia, who lowered her eyes modestly but couldn't hide the smile tugging at her lips. The announcement went viral within hours. News anchors called it the corporate redemption story of the decade. Headlines read, Arab billionaire's company rebuilt by Maid's daughter. 13-year-old linguist teaches Wall Street humility. The girl who rewired a billionaire's heart. But Patricia didn't crave the spotlight. She still came to work every morning at 8 a.m., notebook in hand, her internship badge clipped neatly to her sweater. Junior Linguistic Analyst. And she was good. Not prodigy good, but precise. The kind of good that built trust. 2 months into her internship, she sat quietly in a conference room as Khalida's team prepared for a live televised investor meeting with the Kate Dubai Trade Consortium. The translation was being streamed in 3 languages simultaneously, English, Arabic, and Mandarin. Everything was perfect, until Patricia heard something off. A subtle mistranslation. A single word that changed tone and meaning. The Arabic feed rendered Partnership Equity Review as Equity Withdrawal, a billion-dollar slip hidden beneath polite corporate phrasing. Patricia raised her hand. Excuse me, she said quietly. No one heard. The team was too busy. She stood up. Stop the feed. The technicians froze, startled. The investors on the screen blinked in confusion. Khalida turned sharply from her chair. What are you doing? Patricia didn't hesitate. The translation is wrong. Line 42 of the Arabic transcript. It reads, Sahb al-Hissa, meaning withdrawal. It should be Muraja'at al-Hissa, review. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then Khalida looked toward the interpreter booth. eyes narrowing. The chief translator went pale. "She's right," he admitted. "That would have triggered an auto-termination clause." Patricia's calm never wavered. "Then we correct it now." The correction went live. The meeting resumed. The investors nodded approvingly. The deal, worth over $600 million, closed successfully within the hour. Afterward, Khalida walked over to her in front of everyone. The cameras were still rolling. "You just saved another contract," she said softly. Patricia smiled, lowering her eyes. "It's what you hired me for." Khalida hesitated, then rested a hand on her shoulder, not as a boss, but as something closer to family. "No," she said, "it's what you taught me for." That clip became the centerpiece of every business talk show that week. The internet dubbed Patricia the girl who speaks 15 languages and teaches billionaires humanity. But the real change was quieter. In her office, Khalida removed an old painting of herself shaking hands with an oil minister, a photo that once defined her success, and replaced it with a framed quote Patricia had written on a whiteboard during one of her workshops. "When you learn to speak someone's language, you stop seeing them as competition and start seeing them as connection." She found herself staring at that line often, especially late at night. It reminded her of her own father, who had once told her, "Power without empathy is just another translation of fear." She had forgotten that, until a 13-year-old girl made her remember. One evening, as the sunset painted the skyline gold, she found Patricia in the break room, eating quietly, papers scattered around her. "You don't rest, do you?" Khalida asked gently. Patricia looked up, smiling. "Languages don't rest. They just keep evolving." Khalida chuckled. "You sound like a CEO." Patricia tilted her head. "Maybe one day. For now, I just want to make things clear." The billionaire smiled faintly, an expression half amusement, half pride. "Clarity," she murmured. "The rarest skill of all." As she turned to leave, she hesitated. "Patricia?" "Yes, ma'am?" "You remind me of someone I used to know," Khalida said softly. "The woman I wanted to be before I started mistaking control for leadership." Patricia said nothing, but her silence was enough. A language of grace, forgiveness, and quiet power. Outside, the city glowed, every window a different translation of ambition, and inside that tower, two women, one who had built an empire and one who would build the future, stood in the same light for the first time. Khalida looked at Patricia and saw the daughter she never had, and the leader she wished she could be. The stage lights shimmered like constellations. Rows of flags from every continent curved across the grand ballroom of the World Cultural Innovation Summit. Held that year in Geneva, the same city whose university had once mailed Patricia a certificate she couldn't afford to frame. Now, her name gleamed across a crystal backdrop. Patricia Moore, recipient of the Global Youth Impact Award for bridging humanity through language and education. 1,000 faces watched her walk onto the stage. World leaders, CEOs, educators, journalists, and students from every background imaginable. But Patricia walked with the same quiet steadiness she'd had the day she first entered Khalida Boulos's boardroom. She was taller now, her poise effortless. A soft smile curved her lips as she reached the microphone. "Good evening," she said, then, without pause, switched fluently to French. "Bonsoir à tous," then Arabic. "Masa al-khair," then Yoruba. "Et kale-o," then Mandarin, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Russian, and beyond. Each language rolled from her tongue like a bridge being built in real time. The audience murmured, mesmerized, heads nodded, cameras panned across faces lighting up as they recognized their mother tongues. By the 15th language, the applause had already begun, but Patricia lifted her hand slightly, waiting for the room to quiet. Her eyes softened as she returned to English. "Never let laughter define your limits," she said. "Let preparation define your power." The words struck like melody, simple, resonant, true. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the entire hall rose to its feet. Applause thundered, cameras flashed, some of the audience wiped tears. In the front row, Khalida Boulos sat beside Miriam Moore, both women dressed in elegant simplicity, power expressed without excess. Miriam's hands trembled slightly as she clapped, her eyes wet. Khalida leaned closer and whispered, her voice warm and unguarded. "She's the best decision I ever made." Miriam smiled softly. "I'd say she was God's correction." Khalida chuckled under her breath. "Either way," she said, "she rewrote us both." The ceremony continued, but for the three of them, billionaire, maid, and daughter, time had stilled. When the event ended, they stepped outside into the crisp Swiss evening. The sky was wide and clean, the city lights reflecting in the lake like 1,000 versions of the same dream. Reporters called out questions, flashes burst around them, but Patricia wasn't thinking about headlines. She looked at her mother, who was quietly taking it all in, the limo waiting by the curb, the cameras, the applause that still echoed behind the glass doors. "Mom," she said, "you should have been the one up there." Miriam laughed softly. "Baby, I'm up there every time you open your mouth. I just speak through you now." Patricia squeezed her hand, smiling. "Then, I guess we both graduated." Behind them, Khalida approached, her heels clicking softly against the marble steps. She no longer carried herself like a queen descending among subjects, but like a woman aware that her crown had always been borrowed. "Patricia," she said, stopping beside them, "you were extraordinary." Patricia turned to her, her voice gentle but teasing. "Do you still think maids' daughters should stick to cleaning?" Khalida's smile deepened. "No, my dear," she said, her tone rich with emotion. "They should lead." It wasn't a line rehearsed for the cameras. It was a confession, spoken quietly into the night. Patricia nodded. "Then I think we're finally speaking the same language." The three of them stood there for a moment. Three women who had started on opposite ends of power, now bound by something greater than hierarchy. Understanding. A gust of wind carried through the plaza, tugging at Patricia's shawl. Khalida reached out to fix it instinctively, almost maternal, and Miriam noticed the gesture. For the first time, she didn't see a billionaire touching her daughter. She saw another woman, older, humbled, changed. They walked toward the car together. Cameras followed at a distance, but the real story wasn't what the world would print. It was what each of them had learned in silence. Inside the car, Patricia looked out at Geneva's streetlights glowing like little syllables of gold. "It's strange," she said softly. "All those languages. And yet, the hardest thing to learn was how to be heard." Khalida smiled faintly. "And you did it without shouting." "That's because I wasn't trying to win," Patricia said. "I was trying to translate." Miriam reached over and took her daughter's hand. "You've translated more than words, honey," she said. "You've translated the way the world sees girls like you." Patricia looked between them, her mother's steady love, Khalida's quiet pride, and realized something she hadn't before. She had never wanted revenge. What she wanted was recognition, not for herself alone, but for every unseen voice that had ever been dismissed as background noise. As the car pulled away, she leaned back, whispering to herself in the language that started it all. English, plain and powerful. Respect, she said, tasting the word like victory. The one language everyone understands. Months later, a bronze plaque was mounted in the main lobby of Bulos Global headquarters. It read, "The Moore Initiative, founded in partnership with Patricia Moore and Miriam Moore, because talent has no uniform and dignity has no accent." Visitors often paused to read it. Employees whispered stories about the day a maid's daughter had saved the company, and how the CEO herself now referred to that day not as a scandal, but as a beginning. And in classrooms across the world, children repeated Patricia's closing line, writing it on chalkboards, walls, and notebooks in 15 languages, a phrase that traveled farther than she ever imagined. Never let laughter define your limits. Let preparation define your power. In her quiet office overlooking the city, Khalida sometimes found herself replaying old memories, her own voice saying cruel words, and Patricia's soft defiance echoing back. But now, instead of guilt, she felt gratitude. That young girl had done what no deal, no profit, no empire had ever managed. She had taught her what it meant to be fluent in Tier's humanity. And as she looked out at the skyline, she whispered, almost as if repeating a prayer, "Some lessons are worth a lifetime. Some translators rewrite your soul."